Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for everyone for attending this Governance Committee meeting on Wednesday, December the 27th, 2023. My name is Councillor Alan Platt and I'm Chair of this committee. Councillor Mark Clifford is my Vice Chair. Please note this meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. When you want to speak, please raise your hand. When I invite you to speak, please turn your microphone on. Please turn your microphone off when you finish speaking. If the technology fails, I will adjourn the meeting for a few minutes to try and resolve the issue, or if this is not possible, a new date and time will be organised. Please can everyone ensure their phones are turned to silent. We're not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarm sounds, please exit the way you came in. Not number one, but apologies for absence. We have apologies from our independent members, Charlotte Fitch and Peter Ripley. Item 1 on the agenda, the minutes of the meeting held on Wednesday the 27th of August, Wednesday the 2nd of August 2023. This minutes are here to be approved. Anybody have any comments relating to them?
I'd like to propose there a true record of the meeting, Chair.
Seconded.
Thank you very much. Minutes are approved. We shall move on. Declarations of any interest. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in respect of matters contained in this agenda. Nope. Okay, we shall move on to item 3, moving swiftly. This is the External Audit Progress Report, pages 9 to 16 in the papers, and Matt Derrick from Grant Thornton will present this item. Good afternoon, Matt.
Thank you, Chair. The report today is just our regular progress report on this progress with the audit. It just sets out that we received the draft accounts for the 22-23 financial year in August and commenced the audit of the draft accounts. We've been doing this remotely and on site with the team, the finance team here as well, and things are progressing very smoothly. No major or significant issues to report at the current time, and we expect to report fully on the conclusion of the financial audit in the November Governance Committee. The value for money work has also commenced as well for the current year, during which we'll be looking at the council's arrangements for securing economy, effectiveness and efficiency in services, promoting good governance and financial sustainability. And we'll also be following up on the findings and recommendations that were reported in the previous annual auditor's report on the 21-22 year as well. And again, we'll be looking to bring that report to the November committee for consideration as well. Otherwise, nothing else to really say on this paper, but happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Matt. Any questions for Matt? Councillor Hayden.
Good afternoon, Matt. Could you just verify, please, that it's going to be a late publish, isn't it, of the audit to November? Are there any penalties for doing that, or any reputational damage arising from that? Missing the deadlines?
No penalties. No, I mean reputation damage. I mean it depends on your, perception of the challenge of bringing the accounts, full set of accounts to the deadline that's been set by the central government. I mean the deadline for publishing unaudited accounts I think was May this year, which I think in discussions with the finance team we kind of all agreed that would have been very challenging, and that's we were cited on the delay for that ahead of time and agreed that the account would receive the draft accounts in August. Obviously receiving the accounts in August, it's not, it is very challenging for us to then completely audit within the time frame to meet the deadline of 30th of September, and obviously we made that clear from the discussions we had with the finance team. So no, there's no penalties for missing that target. Obviously, the principles of meeting those the deadline is so that there's timely kind of accountability and transparency on the accounts, but we're doing our best to report as quickly as we can on that.
And do you see the 30th of November as being a realistic target?
Yeah, all on track at this stage to meet that deadline for the financial accounts opinion and the value for money report as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions, Matt? Oh. Sorry, Louise.
Yeah, sorry, if I could also just come in on that point. The deadline for the production of the unaudited accounts was brought forward to the 31st of May this year. There was a consultation undertaken and pretty much all organisations, all councils said it's not possible to do it by that deadline, but nonetheless the deadline was introduced. We got our draft accounts submitted to Grant Thornton at the beginning of well, we'd finished them in July and got them there for the start of the audit in August. And out of the 15 Lancashire authorities, there were only 3 others that had got theirs produced at that point in time. And I would imagine there's still a lot that haven't got them produced. And they are also working in an environment where they haven't even got their previous year's accounts finished, audited and completed. So it's a very difficult audit environment which we're working in at the moment.
Any more questions, anybody? Any more points they'd like to raise? No, we'll move on to item 3A, which is a late addition, shall we say, a discussion on the public sector audit appointments proposed 2023-24 scale fees. Louise is going to present on this rather eye-watering increase.
Okay, so at the end of last week, we received a notification through from PSAA, who are public sector audit appointments, and they are the body that represent the majority of local authorities across the country, fire authorities, etc., in relation to tendering for audit services. When the Audit Commission ceased, all local authorities were responsible for putting in place their own arrangements for having an external audit. But because of the time that would be taken to undertake a tendering exercise, because there are very few audit companies who could provide that service because of the size and complexity, particularly the complexity of local government, you would have had 300 or so tender exercises ongoing at the same time. So PSAA were an organisation that were formed where authorities could opt in if they wanted PSAA to undertake the audit on our behalf, which is what we did. I think probably about 98% of authorities did so. So they tendered for the first 5 years. And various audit companies submitted bids for the work and were approved, and then PSAA assigned them to the various councils, and we have been with Grant Thornton during that time. We're now they've now undertaken the second procurement exercise, and as has been raised on many occasions over the past few years, the actual fees that were levied in the first round of the procurement exercise actually panned out to be insufficient to cover the costs involved in delivering that service. I can't speak whether the bids that were put in were incorrect in the first place, but we do know that over the course of the last 5 years, the audit environment, accounting standards have changed. There's more regulation required, more kind of higher standards to meet that the auditors have to evidence that we've met in the production of our accounts. And all of that in turn adds costs. So having gone through the tender exercise, the bids have come back and they are significantly more than what is being paid at the moment. They've got all the information together, they've done the calculations, and they have come out to us on a consultation basis to say this is your proposed fee. And I know emails were circulated with the information to members in the past couple of days. But basically, as a result of just the procurement exercise, the fee has increased by 151%. So as you'll see, it's now going up by. Unfortunately, I've not got my laptop won't link in, but from memory, it's about £144,000 is the proposal. From what we're paying now is significantly less than that, less than 50. So the purpose really was to just bring it to members' attention. It's a consultation, so we've been given the letter and our proposed scale fee, as have all of the other authorities that are linked in with PSAA. We've got until the 10th of October to respond to that consultation, so it's to get any feedback from yourselves if there's anything that you specifically want me to include in that consultation response. And I suppose just also to note that it's not just Chorley Council that have had this fee increase. You can look across the proposals that have been issued to other councils. I know what some of those are, similar size, and you know, very much the same as us, and it is the same. So it has been that blanket approach taken. But happy to take any feedback you would like me to incorporate.
Thanks, Louise. As Louise said, the purpose of this item being introduced was really to any comments which the members of this committee would like to include in the response to the PSAA. Councillor Clifford.
Thank you, Chair. This is a huge amount to go up 151%. Now, in terms of a response to the consultation, it's fine for DLUHC, Department of Levelling Up, to come out with rules, regulations, changes on a constant basis, but to keep expecting councils to find the extra money is ridiculous, quite frankly. Now, Chorley's in a very good position financially. However, some of the other councils, and no doubt a lot of people have read about those other councils around the country, are in quite a ropey condition, and trying to find extra unbudgeted money is just frankly not right. So, I mean, my personal view on this would be that we need to point this out in the consultation, that we expect the Department for Levelling Up to make transition payments to this, because it's an awful, to just suddenly be slapped with 151% increase is frankly not right, and those who come up with all these decisions should actually try and help, would be my view. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clifford. Any more comments? Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Chair. Really, it's just ask Louise, are there other options available to us? Like I say, it's going into the consultation period, or is it a case of we are handcuffed to this particular company to provide this service because there's no other options out there, and our only option really is to either negotiate on the fee or, like Councillor Clifford referred to, ask for central government support with it.
So we were specifically asked if we wanted to opt in to PSAA in order for them to carry out the tender, which is what we did. At that point in time, the other option that would have been available to us, that we would have undertaken our own tender exercise, which would have been quite a costly exercise to undertake, but also we would be sending our tender documents and contacting those same audit companies who had in turn already bidded into PSAA. So that's it. The market is such that the nature of the work to be undertaken, we couldn't go to like a local firm of accountants or auditors for them to do it really. I don't know, Matt can comment on it, but you know, you have your own public sector teams, don't you, who do nothing but public sector auditing, and some of the smaller firms just wouldn't do that at all. So that would have been an option. It would have been an option to see whether we could have got a group of local authorities and done a joint tender, but arguably that's what PSAA have done, and you know, they've had the buying power of hundreds of authorities and still come out at that price. So I don't know whether we would have got it any different. It's just hard to tell.
Councillor Hayden?
Yeah, do we have any more information about PSAA? Where are they from and how have they been put together?
So the information and a bit more information about how the fees were calculated are on the PSAA website. It was a brand new organisation specifically put together to do this exercise. So
who put it together? Themselves or?
No, at a national level. Really, I think from the end of the audit commission, really, I couldn't give you, I don't know whether you know any.
I'm not that familiar with it because to some extent it predates my audit career. But yeah, when the audit commission was abolished, I understand that PSA was set up as an intermediary, if you like, to provide the kind of assurance around the framework contracting process as an intermediary between local government and the private firms, and therefore, we are bound to contract with them. If we were to be part of the framework, the same way that the authorities opt in, we opt into that, and we are then allocated audits as well through that same process. And PSA's role is to manage that process and ensure that there's fairness and transparency around how audits are allocated and how the fees are determined. And as Louise kind of set out, the PSA consulting on the fees for the next contract period. We aren't directly involved in, as the firms, we're not directly involved in setting those fees. PSA has access to the information from all of the private firms across all of the audits that it manages nationally, and has obviously used that information to then come up with to determine what the fee should be for the next contract period of kind of 5 to 7 years, and that reflects, as Louise alluded to, there's been significant changes in the financial reporting requirements and the audit market over the period of the last 5 years, which has increased the level of work that we have to do, the level of work, the complexity of the authorities facing putting the accounts together. We've got new accounting standards that have been delayed in kind of several years on for local government, the new leases standard, which will fall into the next contract period that the council will have to apply that. There's also been a new an enhanced code of audit for the BFM requirements issued by the National Audit Office as well a couple of years ago, which significantly increases the scope of work we need to do for that and the areas that we need to report on. And as Louis said, the PSA website should have more information on how they determine the fees.
And what you're saying then, is that level of fee going to remain constant for the next 5 to 7 years?
That's my understanding. So what's set at the moment is what's referred to as the scale fee, which is essentially like a fee that's determined as appropriate to deliver the audit. Obviously, there are things that may change within that period that may mean that there's additional costs to delivering the audit. Obviously, where that happens, we obviously do our best to try and absorb that into the fees that we have. But there are there may be changes that are required for the accounts or the level of work we need to do, which means that there may be additional costs. And obviously, we agree where that happens. We obviously agree that with the authority, but also that has to be approved by PSA as well. So any variations to the scale fee, we submit to them at the same time as agreeing it with the authority, and then PSA can challenge that as well, and can even to the extent of reviewing our audit files to determine whether that level of additional fee is appropriate. So the scale fee will broadly stay the same over the period. I'm not that up to speed on how they determine it. I don't know if they build in some inflationary increases over the years, but it is broadly will stay the same. But then anything additional that that is over and above that, we obviously will agree that with management and with PSA.
Sorry.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Hayden, I'm not sure if the thrust of your question was around the independence of the PSAA, where because I think you asked how they were established. They were established by the Local Government Association. They're a wholly owned subsidiary of the IDEA, which is a company that's wholly owned by the LGA. So they do have that kind of independence. So they weren't affiliated to either the suppliers or central government.
Thanks, Chris. Is that okay, Chris? Yeah. Councillor Clifford.
Thanks, Chair. It revolves around what Councillor Hayden said and Matt there. You mentioned, obviously the old scale fee at 41,684 was definitely not enough, and there were many extra payments that had to be made. Now, you've sort of said at 144,787 is the new scale, that you would expect it to cover everything. But you then also mentioned that if it doesn't, you'll be coming back. But we were expecting a higher fee, but not as high as that. So we'd already budgeted for that, but we're not budgeted for this. So in terms of, if you could put a RAG rating on it, please, in terms of a green, amber, red, do you believe you'll be coming back, even at 144,787, for more money throughout the year? Thank you.
That's not necessarily a question I can answer now, but what I can say is that what PSAA will have taken into account in determining that fee is those additional things that we've had to include in the last few years in the audit. So things like the extra work we need to do because Chorley now has to produce consolidated group accounts. That will have been factored into the fee that's already been determined there by PSAA. So they will look at, across all of the information they have, all of the authorities that prepare group accounts, what does it cost to deliver those audits, and what addition to the previous fees that they need to build into that. Similarly, the additional costs of the work that we now need to do on the significant estimates in the accounts due to the increased auditing standards. Again, that has always been added on throughout the last few years. That's been added on in addition to the scale fee, and that will be the same across obviously all the firms and across most local authorities, because that additional work was not factored into the previous scale fee because the standard was brought in during the contract period. But all of those variations that we have added on essentially the last couple of years, those have been factored into the new scale fees. So the principle is that these fees have been determined to enable us to comfortably deliver the audits as required at this time. Obviously, if new auditing standards or new accounting standards are brought in within the period that we're not aware of, then obviously that could change things. But the principle, as I understand it, is that these fees have been determined by PSAA as sufficient for the requirements to deliver these audits, factoring in all of those additional bits of work that are required. Also, just to point out that obviously we have no input in determining these fees at the moment, so it's not us that have come up with this estimate.
Thank you for that. Just to come out, and this will be for Louise, really. If I can remember what I was going to say, actually. So we've mentioned recurring fees, and that's all been calculated. But how confident, Louise, would you say that PSAA haven't added some non-recurring fees? I'm trying to get to the bottom of why it went up so much. Are we confident there's no mistakes being made, and we're not 20,000, 30,000 out here or something? Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Clifford.
Sorry, Chair.
Okay. Thanks, Louise. We have a proposal, suggestion, whatever, from Councillor Clifford to contact the DLUHC. I'm just wondering whether the committee would also think it's worth contacting PSAA and express our disappointment at this increase. I don't know whether we could ask them to justify it, because we might well be baffled with figures at the end of the day, but certainly when you subscribe to what is an LGA sort of national set up to presumably designed to get value for money and things, it seems quite an increase.
The information on the tables, Louise, does it compare with previous tenders that have gone out, say, to Grant Thornton when they've priced the service for an audit? Is there anything comparable you can see where there's been where the big increase has come from?
So we wouldn't have been privy. I certainly wasn't, but the time that it would have gone out was about, it would have been about 2016, 17 when the tender was done. And I don't know. Sorry, apologies. And I'm not quite sure what information they asked for in their tender documents. They would have been sent to interested parties. So all we've done is basically, do we want to go it alone? Do we want to try and get the service ourselves, or do we want to opt in? And the decision taken back in the 2016-17 era was we would opt in, and therefore PSAA just cracked on and delivered, went through the tender. And again, we were given the same decision this time, and we've opted in again, and this is what's come back.
When the contract or the pricing schedule came back for the service,
And
does it come back in that format, or is it just a lump sum?
I don't know, because it wouldn't have. We haven't been privy to it. That would have been gone back to PSAA. Right. But equally, PSAA would have taken back responses from several different audit firms, so KPMG, Grant Thornton, Mazars. There's quite a few. And they will have taken all of that on board. So we haven't got this price because we're using Grant Thornton. We have got this price because that is what PSAA have determined as a scale fee for an authority of our size.
I accept that. I just wondered if there was anything where we could actually see where it's to come from, the massive rise in fee.
We've never been provided with that level of document, and maybe those are the questions I can put in the consultation. It's very difficult to support it because there is no analysis to determine how that 151% has been.
Thank you.
Thanks, Louise. Thanks, Christy. Any more? Councillor Martin?
Surely a side note that if we're actually writing to PSSA to express our dissatisfaction, perhaps we should also write to the LGA, given it is something set up by the LGA, and I'm sure we won't be the only council affected by this. So actually express our dissatisfaction to them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think probably Christine's just jumped on my little scribble here to ask the PSAA to justify the increase. Given, I think we have to place some sort of trust in the fact that it is an LGA body, and I'm sure somewhere down the line the figures will match whatever they've told us they are. But I think, if it's a consultation, we're entitled to ask I suppose the three queries really. Is the committee happy with that? And if I've got them right, it was Councillor Clifford's suggestion to contact the DLUHC regarding contributions. Express our disappointment to the PSAA at the increase and ask them to justify it. Have I missed anything? No? Are we okay with those three? Sorry, similar letter to the LGA, yeah. Can't even read my own scribble, sorry. Okay, any more on that item? Thanks, everybody. We'll now move on to item 4, which is the Internal Audit Plan, October 23 to March 24, pages 17 to 22 of your agendas, and Jackie Murray, Senior Auditor, will present this item. Over to you, Jackie.
Hello, good afternoon. So the report you have in front of you provides details of the Internal Audit Plan from October 23 to March 24. So this sets out the programme of work that the Internal Audit team will undertake. So the plan, as you may remember, is the vehicle by which the audit workload is identified and how we prioritise our workload. So the purposes of the report is to remind members of the respective roles of managers and internal audit, to maintaining a sound system of governance and internal control within the council. And we also seek the committee's approval today for the internal audit plan, as this is a requirement of the public sector internal audit standards. So if I draw your attention to paragraph 8, The professional standards state that the Chief Audit Executive must establish risk-based plans to determine the priorities of the internal audit activity, and these have to be consistent with the goals of the organisation. So the internal audit plan for the next 6 months is being constructed after taking consideration of the following activities outlined in paragraph 9. So the plan contains a programme of reviews for the period October to March, and we've attached details of these in Appendix A. And we've clearly shown the link between the work we propose to undertake and if these meet the strategic or the operational risk or a corporate objective. We've also included details where we're involved in key projects which we generally assist with advice and guidance on risk management, internal control and governance. So if I draw your attention to paragraph 11, I provided details where we have had a reduction in the level of audit resource available, but we're actually at this point in time undertaking a recruitment exercise, which is looking quite promising. So there has been a small impact on the number of auditable days available going forward. Our plan will be delivered mostly by our in-house team, but we will be using some external support for our IT reviews, so we bring in some IT specialists to undertake them. And we also have a reciprocal arrangement with neighbouring authorities to undertake our risk management review, as the head of audit also has responsibility for risk management. So our annual opinion, although there has been a small reduction in the number of days that within our plan, we have included enough reviews to provide the head of internal audit sufficient coverage for her annual opinion in March next year. And it's anticipated that the number of audit days will increase next year once our new employees fully trained and a fully fledged member of the team. So as I detailed, we have the plan attached to Appendix A, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Jackie. Any questions from the committee? Councillor Clifford.
Thank you, Chair. And it is paragraph 11, and you said that looks promising in terms of the recruitment. Is there a recruitment deadline? Is there a date? What will be the expected start date of the new applicant? Thank you.
So we have interviews on Monday, and we're hoping, all going well, that they'll start in November.
Any more points, any more questions? Councillor Moss?
Can I just ask, please, what is capita migration? Oh, sorry. I'll ask it later then.
Any more questions? Nope. This report is actually for approval, so we need a proposer and a seconder, please.
I'd like to propose that, please, Chair.
Councillor Clifford, Councillor Sherwood, all in favour? Right, we'll move on to the next item, which is a lot more pages. Internal Audit Progress Report, and Dawn will provide us with that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So as you can see, the report you have before you is our progress report. So this is a backward look. Jackie's report was just a forward look about the plan, the reviews we are planning to undertake. This is the backward look about which reviews we have finalised. So it's the work that we have completed since April this year, included up to the end of August. And the first thing you'll notice is that the report pack is much bigger, and that is because in conjunction with the chair and to increase openness and transparency, we've made the decision to provide members with copies of all finalised internal audit reports and not just those that were awarded a limited assurance rating. So all those reports are included within the pack, and so you can see exactly what's the rating that's been agreed and the reasons for that rating. You will see that there is one report which was awarded limited assurance, and that's the review of sundry debtors. And if I can just focus on that for a few minutes, it was given a limited assurance rating, but the thing to note about that particular review was it had a very narrow scope. So normally when we look at sundry debtors, which is how we collect our income, it's not related to council tax or business rates, it's about our miscellaneous income. So it's about services we provide, like it could be building control, it could be pest control or waste collections, it could be a variety of services, income from commercial rents. We would normally do the review, which covers literally from how we deliver that service all the way through to invoicing, debt collection, how we report, how we monitor those debts. But this particular review purely focused on the debt collection, the end point. If we had done the whole review, which is what we would normally do, that rating might be slightly different, because if all other aspects of that sundry debtor process were working as intended, it might just be that end bit that had stopped working effectively. So what we found when we've looked at the sundry debtors is that the controls are there, they're just not operating effectively at the minute. So the system's effectively fallen down. However, it's not going to take a huge amount of time or effort to reinstate those controls and get them operating effectively again. If you've got any specific questions about that review, we've got in attendance Alison. Alison's our head of customer services, and she's responsible for sundry debtors and collection, so she'll be able to provide you with more explanation. So that's like I said, that's details of the work that we've completed. As Jackie's alluded to, we have lost some audit resource over the past few months, and that's impacted on what we're able to deliver. So what we did was we looked at the audit plan that we have in place for between April and September, and we had to make a judgment call about what reviews we could complete with the resource we had available and what we had to request deferral of. Now, as the committee have approved the plan, you know, we have to obtain your permission to defer some reviews. So the two that we've selected are listed under paragraph 12, and that's capita migration and the cemetery management. And we don't just pluck these out of thin air, we make an informed decision, and that's based upon the level of risk within that review, any other knowledge we have of those systems, any other sources of assurance that we can rely on, and they're the two that we've selected for potential deferral. It doesn't mean to say that they won't get done. What it means is they'll be deferred to a time when we look at the next, we've put together the plan for next year, so for the next, starting in April next year, and they'll be considered in the risk assessment again. There's no guarantee that they will be included, because obviously our work is risk-based, so it very much depends on what else is happening at that point in time. The report just goes on to say about our own performance. Again, everything is on track in terms of our indicators. One is slightly lower, and that's the implementation of management actions. But however, that's something we monitor really, really closely. And it's not that the actions won't be implemented, it's just that there is a slippage in the timescale for implementation. So I'm confident that all the actions that we've recommended and have been agreed are in progress. They're just not at the stage where we can say they're implemented. Finally, as well, we've recently had our peer review against the Public Sector Internal Audit Standards. I've attached that report because it confirms that the best we can get is conform. As a service, we conform to the standards, and that report shows you the detail. There's just a few minor process improvements we need to make, and we'll implement them over the course of the next few months. But yeah, happy to answer any questions on that report.
Thanks, Dawn. Any questions from members of the committee? We'll start with Councillor Franz.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's coming back to the sundry debtors. I noticed from pages 34 to 38 that obviously things are being put in place to improve that. I also note that on page 37, paragraph 7, that debt is over £2 million. So obviously that's a considerable amount of money. Basically, do you think what's set in progress between 34 and 38 will help us recover a large amount. I mean, appreciate that some of it may not be recoverable, but we'll get as much of that back as we possibly can.
Thank you, Councillor France, for that question. Yes, I do believe the review identified two key weaknesses across the service. One was a lack of awareness of the Fair Collection Charter that was introduced last year, and the other was services not taking ownership of their debts. That's partly due to quite a high turnover in staff across services where processes haven't been handed over when other people have moved on. Both of these weaknesses are quite easy to address, and as we've touched on the action plan, you can see that there is a quick turnaround to ensure that controls and measures are in place to sufficiently manage any risks that have been identified.
Thank you, Alison.
Any more questions? I'll take Councillor Hayden and then Councillor Clifford.
The 2 million, how much in a percentage monetary value is that to turnover? What percentage are we talking about of business?
The overall debt on miscellaneous income, it does fluctuate depending what's being raised and what's being paid in a specific period. So you'll probably be aware that there's some large invoices that we raise, particularly around Section 106 invoices and SIL. The overall debt is around 4.6 million. At the time of the report, there was around 2.1 million at this specific reviewed by Exchequer stage. It is quite an ambiguous recovery stage. As part of the piece of work that I'm doing to make improvements, we are going to define more specific recovery routes so it's easier for services to identify where debts in their service areas actually are. So within this stage, at the moment, there are cases that are waiting to be written off or for a decision to be made whether the debt's appropriate to write off. There's also some cases in there that are already on a repayment plan, or they're with a debt collector to recover on our behalf. So it doesn't really give a clear indication as it stands what stage in the recovery route some debts are at, and that's what we're looking to improve. So it's, as I say, it's easier for services to identify what action they need to take to try and progress payment of some of these invoices.
I was just trying to get an idea of, it's a lot of money, but what is it? What would be the total amount of business, and what percentage of that would be debt? You know, the budget for a particular year might be so many million, and you've got some of it will go down as debt. Is that a low percentage? Are we talking in real terms low values, or is it a lot of money? If you understand what I mean.
Yes, I understand what you mean. So we would always talk about the net budget of the council being about 15 million, but that is expenditure net of some incomes. In order to know what the what level of debt compares to the overall value of invoices raised, we'd have to go back and look on the system to say over the course of a year we raise invoices to the tune of, you know, it could be 10 million, 15, 20 million, whatever that figure is, and at a point in time X of that was outstanding. But as Alison said, it does fluctuate quite significantly, because if you say on the 30th or the 31st of a month, you could get the figure for age debt, and then the very next day you might then raise invoices for quarterly rent, or in some instances annual rent, which would be a huge amount, but the company would pay them by instalments over the year. So it would look like there was a massive amount of debt, but it would be paying off, but only paid off in
I was
quarterly.
thinking probably past year's published accounts was X amount of money and so much debt. It was just to see relevance, really.
No, I think that is a really good point. Because of the various forms of income, some is grant and wouldn't even touch the debtors system. Some is council tax, doesn't touch the debtors system. Business rates equally. So the debtors system is more about anything other than council tax, grants and business rates. So it would be extracting it out, and we would need to do that on the debtors system.
There was just one more thing. On the Chorley and South Ribble findings, on the Appendix B, page 35, there are 2 bullet points on the management responses. The first one is about encouraging officers who have debt recovery responsibilities to complete the fair collection. And I think perhaps you should replace encourage with require.
We have already started to have discussions at senior leadership team and senior management team about the requirements really to ensure that we are collecting debts effectively. Staff who are involved in that process, it will be mandatory for them to complete this training around the fair collection
okay
charter.
then, but you just said encourage, so it sounded as though you read it if you fancy, but other than that, don't bother. Because it seems an important thing to have under the belt, you know, so it should be. Thank you for that. Sorry, Mark.
Councillor Clifford.
Thank you, Chair. A question on that, really, over £2 million. Obviously, I can imagine if that was in Charlie's bank account gaining interest, it would be very useful. So the question would be, what, I suppose, is an acceptable level of this debt to where we could, and a date, I know we've got a December date from the work you're doing there, but to actually get to where it's at an acceptable level, so where we could actually say that rather than it being limited, it's adequate. Thank you.
I think from the point of view of the audit review, it's not the amount of money that's led this to be limited. That's a consequence of the failure of the controls that were in place. You could still have all those controls working and have the overall debt figure of being 2 million, because you could still have residents or businesses in the borough who owe the council money not being unable to pay for a variety of different reasons. That's from the point of view of the audit review. From the point of view of the council, it's impossible to give you that figure as to what would be acceptable. What we would have to do for each debt is apply our policies and processes and look at whether that debt is one that is reasonable for the council to carry or should be written off. And again, without knowing the reasons being applied for that debt not being paid, it's impossible for us to get. We would look at each one individually rather than just look at a global figure and saying, oh, well, we can carry £2 million worth of debt. Of course we can't, but it might be that we bring to the executive member for resources and say, these figures are owed, this business has gone insolvent, so, or we've had an offer, as we've had in the past on some tenanted premises, of an offer on percentage on the pound, because of financial difficulties, and we have to take a commercial view at that point.
Thank you. Any more questions, Councillor Martin?
Yes, so I've just got a couple of questions there. So I'm going to take a guess at the accounting process. So you issue an invoice, I take it goes through an automated process of email generate. My business actually books space from the council, and I know I get the emails of pay this invoice. So can the debt be that figure of debt, can you break that down into an age debtor for us, so we know if it's a 30-day debt, then we know it's recoverable. Once you get to 60, 90 day, 120 day, that's where your issues begin. So for us to actually understand that debt figure more, I think it would be quite helpful for us to have it broken down into an age debtor figures, but also things like Louise said, when you raise a rental invoice, for example, that could be an annual, well, that's going to go into your accruals and prepayments. So effectively, that shouldn't be on your debt figure. Because if you're issuing an invoice for 12 months and it's paid in increments of over 12 months, the only debt that would be on your outstanding debt figure is anything within if they don't make a monthly payment, because the rest of it isn't actually brought forward debt yet.
I was just going to say on that final point, Charlie are very good at raising what we call periodic invoices. So they only invoice when that money's become due. That's a slightly different approach at South Ribble, where they do raise the debt for the whole of the year, and like you say, it does give a false representation of money that's actually owed to the council.
Sorry, and just one last question. So you referenced the use of debt collectors. So at what point are you bringing in an outside debt collector, and is that on a collection basis, or is it purchase debt? So basically, the council sells the debt on.
The decision is for the service, really, whether it's an appropriate debt to go through that route. So they obviously receive the invoice, the reminder, a final notice. At that point, we start to have conversations with the service around the appropriateness of the debt, whether it should be written off, if it's perhaps like a service charge for Cotswold, something like that, might be appropriate. But if it's a more significant debt, like a SIL or Section 106 invoice, then we'd want to go down the legal route. So it is a case-by-case basis, those decisions are made.
And do you operate that on a recovery or a purchase debt? Basically, are we selling any of our debts on to be recovered?
Okay, any more questions, Councillor Hayden?
Just a matter of interest, do you get, some people who are just continuously late payers who are constantly in debt with you?
It's a mix, really. You do get your people who are struggling to pay genuinely, and we do offer repayment plans to them to support them through that process. And then you do always get people who just don't want to pay that bill. So that's when we make the decisions then whether to progress it through a more formal legal route to recover the monies.
Chris?
Yeah, I just want to be clear. The purpose of the audit reviews are to review the operation of the processes and to help the council manage risk. Some of the detail that we're going into kind of outside the scope of this, but one of the things that could be an outcome of this, just taking your points as to repeat debtors, is that one of the failings here is that we could have been continuing to provide a service or selling services to an individual who hadn't paid for it last month or the month before. So by getting the processes right, it enables the council not only to manage the existing debt, but try and prevent it building up more. And that's where I think members can start taking comfort, because I think the conclusion is a lot of these processes were there, they just haven't been picked up or operated properly. And that's one of the outcomes here, is that we can, using the management actions and the recommendations, the processes, manage our contractual and debt relationships properly with the public and people we provide services to.
Thanks, Chris. I think, as Chris said, we're actually being asked to note the position with regard to the internal audit plan rather than the detail, but I would have to say, having heard the comments from members, and previously describing £87,000 as an eye-watering figure, I'm not sure where 2.1 million comes in. And I'm sorry if I'm going against what Chris has just said, but that figure was actually from May. Do we have any idea whether that's up or down since?
Sorry, I'm just checking if I've got that information readily to hand. I've got lots of monetary values in front of me, but I don't think that's one of them, I'm afraid. But I can certainly bring that back to the group.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you, Alison. And I was going to suggest, if the committee will, that if we have an update every now and again, so that at least we know which way it's going when we are actually approving the plan, which is designed to solve the issue. Right, unless there are any more questions, presumably we shall move on to the recommendations, which are... Sorry, Councillor Clifford? Recommendations are to note the position with regard to the internal audit plan, pretending that there are no figures involved, and to approve the deferral of the two reviews which Dawn raised from the April to the September audit plan. Oh, hang on. Can I have a proposer, please? Sorry. Oh. And a seconder. All in favour? Thanks. I think we're now on to item 6, which is the Governance Committee Effectiveness Review 2023, pages 73 to 92 on your agenda. And again, Dawn will present this item.
Yeah, thank you. So members will recall at the meeting in August, we rose awareness of the new, well, not new, it came out last year, the SIP for Guidance, the Audit Committee Practical Guidance for Local Authorities and the Police. And we said what we would do at that time is we would carry out a review, a self-assessment of how the committee operates against the best practice. And that review is now being carried out, and the results are included at the Appendix A. So there are a number of areas in where we need to make some improvements, and these start at paragraph 11 onwards. So the first one is the terms of reference. We need to do a little bit of work on the terms of reference to make it match the model terms of reference, and that work will be undertaken over the next few weeks, and we'll come back to the committee in November. The guidance recommends that we carry out a skills and knowledge assessment every year. We knew this guidance was coming out, so we held off last year. So we did it in 21. And again, you'll recall that we did it at the last meeting. We issued the skills and knowledge questionnaire. We've had good response, so I thank everybody for participating in that. We've summarised the results, and they're included at Appendix B. As a result of those, the outcome of those skills and knowledge questionnaire, what we've actually done is we've arranged some SIPFA training. So SIPFA are actually going to come in on the 30th of October and deliver specific audit committee training. I have put like a programme of the day included with this pack, but we'd encourage everybody to attend. I think we've suggested it's mandatory for governance committee members, and recommended for everybody else. But yeah, attendance would be really good at that training. We've done it before. We did it a couple of years ago and the feedback was really positive. So hopefully everybody will be able to attend that. Moving on down the report, one of the big recommendations that SIPFA make is it's not a requirement, it is just a recommendation at this stage. It's about having independent members on the committee. The reasons for their recommendation are listed under paragraph 16, but ultimately this is a member decision about whether the use of independent members would be beneficial to the committee. So I know other local authorities in Lancashire do use independent members, and I know we have them on this committee, but they're more for the standards side. This is for the audit, governance and risk side. So it's whether we try to recruit a member who may have an independent person, who may have head of audit experience, or they may have been a director of finance, or somebody who's heavily involved in risk. They're there to give their advice and guidance and support the committee. But as I say, ultimately, it is a committee decision about whether you feel that would be beneficial or not. Lastly, the only other adjustment we need to make to how we operate is that we need to do an annual report. We do have good reports going to full council anyway, but this is like an annual report that sums up everything, all the activity we've done over the year, but it includes the effectiveness review as well. We spoke to the chair about that, and we're going to do that in May once we've gone through a full year's cycle of reports. So as I say, the training is arranged. I'd strongly encourage everyone to try and attend if you can, but happy again to answer any questions on that report.
Thanks, Dawn. Any questions for Dawn? Councillor Clifford.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, on to the independent member. I've been thinking about this, and it does actually sound a good idea, especially if we can recruit someone with a lot of experience. With everything, though, as councillors, we undertake quite a lot of training, and we're just discussing the training that we're about to have. Will also that independent member not just be assessed if we decide that we need an independent member at the start, but also be regularly trained as well. That's what I'd want to see, because as things change all the time, we have to be trained, and I think there should be as well if the committee decides that they'd like to see an independent member. Thank you.
Any more questions? Any more points? Anybody want to raise anything? No? Okay. We will move on to Recommendations are that the committee notes the reports and considers the comments, considers and comments on the self-assessment of good practice and the subsequent actions. That will possibly be addressed with the training. But if anybody has any comments to make, now's the time. And the second point, we consider the appointment of independent members. Councillor Clifford has almost suggested we do. I'll take that as a proposal. If anybody would like to second that, and whether it's for a decision or not, I'm not sure because my script doesn't tell me, but if we have a show of hands, at least we can address it. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. We shall move on to the Evergreen RIPA application update, which I'm guessing will be very brief.
Yes, Chair. It's the Regulatory of Investigatory Powers Act update. Yeah, we haven't made any applications for the use of the powers under the RIPA Act or any requests to the magistrates for those powers.
Thanks, Chris. And finally, the work programme. This is considered the work programme for the committee, pages 93 and 94 in your papers. Anyone have any points to raise? Dawn? Oh, sorry, I thought you were going to be button. Sorry, Councillor Clifford.
Thank you, Chair. Just one. It was previously mentioned about sundry debtors bringing the information back. If we could squeeze that into one of those dates, I think get it down on for a meeting would be good.
Do you want me to include it in the next interim report? So that will be in January 24, by which time all the actions should have been implemented by then.
That'd be great. Thanks, Dawn. Any more points, anybody? I'm greeted with silence. I'll take that as a no. We have no urgent business.
Sorry, I should have raised this under one of the earlier reports, but we kind of got stuck into the limited assurance report. Dawn mentioned in her report the peer review that was undertaken, and I do think it's a lot of credit to the team that they got, which sounds really depressing, but conforms is the rating they got, but you can't do any better than that. So I think I just want to say how well they've done. And what a good team we have in the internal audit. So it's just to shine a little light on conforming not being a bad thing.
Thanks, Chris. Very remiss of me. I'll take that as a slap on the hand. Sorry, Dawn. I think on behalf of the committee, I hope you won't mind if we do thank Dawn and her team for the work they do. There's a lot of work involved, as we found out today, just on one particular item. No urgent business. I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.